Hello and welcome to the Dailies on your winning station, where we keep you updated with what is happening from our Nigerian newspaper. You know, the countdown is still ongoing with 5 days to the handing over on Monday. I am Sarah Elisha Dasham, and of course, Rachel Tanzi is here with me. Good morning.
Morning, Sarah.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm great. Thank you so much. We are live on Facebook and also on YouTube. Please do well to contribute by dropping your comment and your thoughts on what you feel is relevant from the stories we have on the paper this morning. And then we'll open the phone line later on the show, so we can also give you the ample opportunity to also air your view on, you know, stories of interest to you. And we will be going straight to the paper, starting with this day newspaper.
On this day newspaper, 28 years after pulling out, NNPC resumes crude oil drilling campaign in Chad Basin. The writer following that, Buhari, Kyari, Komolafe, others upbeat about hitting oil soon, and we have 943 million barrels initial yield expected, and you can find the details inside the paper on page 40. CBN revokes operating licenses of 183 microfinance banks, PNBs, and you can find the details on page 40. We have Fudge leads Biden's delegation to presidential inauguration. We have a picture story that says official launch of Owando Lamata electric mass transit buses. The big story on this day newspaper, my government invested in infrastructure for economic growth and prosperity. A statement coming from Buhari defends his administration's hide their profile, insists borrowed funds are tied to visible projects, inaugurates second Niger Bridge, 2 others road project. Names Federal Secretary Yenogwa after ex-president Goodluck Jonathan. Southeast governors shower economic unprecedented for unveiling bridges. You can find the details on page 40. Buhari attends farewell regimental dinner. You can find the details inside the paper, and that's all the news on this day newspaper.
Another Punch newspaper started with a big story on Tinubu's inauguration. Security agency raid hotspot. Biden names the U.S. delegation, with the writer Housing and Urban Development Secretariat to lead the U.S. team on May 29 handover. Security agency to restrict movement to Eagle Square beginning from Friday. And UK ex-Prime Minister Burr meets President-elect, says the running government a tough job. You can see a picture story actually showing him together with the President-elect, and I'm sure he's giving him some insight because leading, you know, this is one of the toughest jobs. So he's giving him an insight on that. You can do well to grab the Punch and read more detail of that on page 2. And on the tribunal, Atiku Obi tackle Tinubu as hearing begins Tuesday. You can find detail of that on page 2. CBN revokes 179 microfinance banks and others license. You can find that too inside the paper. Panic in Oshun as 35 people hospitalized after inhaling tear gas. You can find detail of that inside the paper. Coming from Abiodun, Omosho to blame Dangote relocating refinery to Lagos. You do well to read more detail of that story inside the paper on page 16. And we have here on Buhari's yes, infrastructure deficit remains wide. You do well to read more detail of that story inside the paper, and that's all on the Punch newspaper.
On New Telegraph newspaper, CBN revokes 179 microfinance banks and others licenses. War risks insurance, Nigeria's $400 million annual premium fraudulent. You can find the details on page 17. Buhari to Senate approve 16 billion naira refund to Borno. Effective January 2024, UK bars Nigerian students, others from traveling with family. Don't use National Assembly leadership tussle to divide Nigerians, Khan warns politicians. Biden sends delegations to attend Tinubu's inauguration. 35 Osun students collapse after police tear gas drill. You can find the details on page 2 and 6. And the big story on New Telegraph, 10 National Assembly leadership, how Tinubu Kwankwaso Paris meeting altered permutations. Searchlight now on Sani Musa Unobere. Opposition can't take anything from us, coming from a source as Yari supports base way stronger. We have Wase boycotts leadership meetings, Bajabia Mila plenary processions. APC will review zoning to give the North Central preceding position, coming from Gagdi. You must emerge through election, Adamu tells Abbas and Kalu. We've not endorsed any candidate, coming from the greater majority. You can find the details on page 25 and 31. Still on New Telegraph, and on presidential poll, court consolidates Labour Party, APM, PDP's petition against Tinubu. You can find the details on page 3 and 4. How UK Special Forces and others operated in Nigeria and 18 others secretly. This is a revelation coming to us. You can read the details on page 27. Federal government inaugurates second Niger Bridge, Fed Secretariat in Anambra. We are vindicated, says Ngige. Incoming administration will face industrial crisis, a statement from the NLC president. Alleged assault, Shehu Kuti released on bail. Impeach Ogun Deputy Speaker blocks Assembly gate. At the downside of the paper, we have a study that said BCG vaccine to reduce risks of Alzheimer's disease. The details you can find on page 8, and that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
Daily Sun newspaper, Southeast governors name second Niger bridge after Buhari express optimism it will open zone for more economic development. You can do well to read detail of that on page 8. Court rules on fresh suit seeking to stop Tinubu's inauguration Friday. You can do well to find detail of that story on page 27. And 6 days to the handing over, Buhari reveals secrets of certain decisions. Explain why he appointed female finance minister shun country's border for long. Unfold how Niger Republic and others will defend him if Nigeria disturbs his peace. You can find detail of that story on page 6. UK ban on Nigerian students taking families with them effective from January 2024. If you could follow on Monday, we said that the UK Prime Minister are looking forward on banning Nigerian students. So that is for those who are maybe running masters and also, master programs especially. And then possibly maybe they will not look into those who are running PhD because they will be running for maybe about 4 to 5 years. So we'll see that it will be taking effect from January 2024. So it will give Nigerians that are studying their ample time to actually prepare themselves and all of that. So we just keep our fingers crossed, even though they have been back and forth about a YouTuber that went to have I think he had a meeting with the BBC where he said that most of the Nigerians that are studying there and do not really need the degree, and a lot of Nigerians came after him and saying that what does he mean by that? That is not supposed to be said of him, who is a Nigerian as well. But then regardless of what it is, I think this should be an eye-opener for us as a country to build our own home, build our health sector, build our educational sector, so we don't get to be treated like not just second class, but even third class citizens outside there, because we see the way we're being treated sometimes. So I hope that that will serve as an eye-opener for us. So we can read detail of that story on page 26. Tribunal merges Atiku Obi APM petition against Tinubu. Commence trial on May 30th. That is after the handing over. You can find detail on page 6. Kogi AG versus AGF. Supreme Court caution against continued harassment of Kogi officials pending outcome of suit. You can find on page 5. Biden sent 9-man delegation for Tinubu's inauguration. Ex-UK Prime Minister Bird visit President-elect. You can find detail of that on page 26. But of course, I know, looking at the big story on the Daily Sun, this right that I see, the president is unfolding how Niger Republic and others would defend him if Nigeria disturbs the space. Rachel, what do you think about that? Right.
You're a Nigerian, so why should Niger be the one defending you? So these are the kinds of statements that make people assume, speculate, and just form stories that we do might look factual, but there are no facts tied to it. However, I don't think the president should say another country will support him rather than Nigeria in the first place. I don't think we're going to do anything to you as the ex-president of this country, except if you know that there's a skeleton in your cupboard that might come out when you drop from being the president, except if you have fears of something going south, then perhaps you're telling us that something has been going south even while you were the president, and perhaps because of your position, nobody put an eye on you, but now that you'll be out, there will be a lot of chaos, but then there's no need for this statement in the first place. And even if for some reason the statement is out there, then it shouldn't be that another country will come to your aid. Why is that so? But whatever the reason behind his comment, we'll just leave it and see how things will turn out to be once he leaves the office.
Of course, true, Rachel. Well, that's all on Daily Sun newspaper.
On Nigerian Tribune, presidential election petition court merges APM Atiku's Obi's petition. We have Nigerian students of others can no longer take family to UK from January. You can find the detail on page 13. National Assembly preceding officers, horse trading may accommodate North Central. We have endorsement not enough Adamu caution Abbas. Lawan denies contesting for Senate presidency. And the big story, why are closed borders banned rice importation, says only God can effectively guard Lake Chad to Benin border, which is 1,600 kilometers, explains why he chose women as ministers of finance. I said, if anybody forces me, I have a good relationship with my neighbors. Niger people will defend me, he restates. Inaugurates second Niger Bridge, Southeast governors name it after him. You can find the details on page 6 and 11. These are all statements coming from the president. Sheon Kuti released on bail. Kogi AG versus AGF. Supreme Court cautions against continued harassment of Kogi officials. The writer says adjourns hearing to October 10. Prepare for pandemic worse than COVID-19, World Health Organization warns. Ekiti Airport to begin operation in October. You can find the details on page 13. How I want to be buried, coming from Olubara of Ibara. 14.3 million Nigerians ages 15 and 64 engaged in drug abuse. This is a report coming from the NDLEA, and we can see that this is a problem that is not about the older people only, but we are finding very young people involved in drugs, not only the consumption, but even in selling it, which is a crime, and we are seeing much older people of 64. These are people that should be retired selling. These are people that should have worked and served the government and retiring and resting, but we are seeing that they are also involved in drug-related crimes. We just hope that the NDLE do something about it and that we will have no drug crimes or lesser than what we have presently. You can find the details on page 4. We have some picture story. Do well to get Nigerian Tribune, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Which I'd like to still pick up on still on the paper, where they say prepare for a pandemic worse than COVID-19, World Health Organization warned. And the reason why I just want to say little on it is the fact that I clearly remember during the 2020 COVID, even though it started in 2019 in some other countries, but then it was actually more serious in Nigeria in 2020. And we saw the way the entire, in fact, most countries were shut down as a result of that. And I clearly remember here in the country where we're hearing that this thing is becoming serious. Our Minister of Health said we have all that it takes. We are prepared. Nothing is going to take us by surprise. And then before we realized it, we were actually down already. We saw scores and scores of people coming down. Our loved ones, we know our loved ones who personally came down with the COVID, you know, and I just hope that right now we'll not just take this lightly, but we'll go extra mile to see what can we do. And I keep saying that I think a lot of us, of course, they said that I think some of the cautions have been relaxed, some of the, you know, you can actually walk around without your face masks and all of that. But I said the face mask is not just for COVID-19. The weather also, we have bacteria, viruses and all of that, which you can still protect yourself. You have cold, which is still a kind of a waste. These are some of the symptoms. So let's just see some of this, ways that we can curtail all of these things, and not just wait until it's already, facing us before we know, okay, we want to do something about it. Because there's something we do in this country that is very, very bad. And one of the things is that we always look for how to correct. We don't look for how to prevent things from happening. If you look at our various sectors that are falling, there were better things we'll have done to prevent it. But right now, there is already crumbling. We're looking for how to correct it. So I hope that we'll look for how to prevent this thing from happening rather than waiting until it is already there, then we begin to work on. We remember during the Ebola virus, and where we were applauded has been the way, the measure we took, looking at the former president, Goodluck Jonathan, and before realizing Ebola was no longer in Nigeria. So let us see, proactive measures coming from our health minister, commissioners. If need be, they should have a meeting now before we finally start seeing things that are not really going well. So I hope that we do that, because if it's going to be worse than COVID-19, then that means it's a very serious case. So we have to do something about that.
Well, the thing is that COVID-19 is still out there, and we've let our guards down, whether we like it or not, even before it was completely out, because I know last year we still had few cases, and there was just nothing being done much. We let our borders, the airports open too quick to countries that were still having cases of COVID, and then the procedures that were taken at the airport to make sure that the testing, the washing of hands, everything, we saw it on the papers where it was no longer taking place in the airport, and we remember saying this is wrong. As long as we still allow people coming in and out of the country from countries that are still suffering and having cases of COVID-19, it shouldn't be. And now the good thing is that the World Health Organization is coming to tell us that something worse is coming, but then we need details. Is it just a prediction, or for sure that something more terrible than COVID-19 should come in? Now, Ebola was more dangerous than COVID-19 because its spread was wild, and we still have African countries that are still having cases of Ebola because it was wide. It wasn't just a sickness where if you were older or if you had any pending disease in your body, no. This was targeting both young, strong, and healthy people, and the death toll didn't have a specific demographic. It was just everybody together, and then we were able to do something drastic about it. Then it keeps showing that we have the capacity to do drastic things concerning health in this country, but it only determines who are the people in that position that are willing to put in the work. So just as you said, Sally, I just hope that we don't take this warning from the World Health Organization for granted, but we should do more in-depth survey, and let's ask them, let's know precisely what is this thing that they're asking us to brace ourselves up for, that is worse than COVID-19. And it is not only a Nigerian thing, because they didn't say in Nigeria. I believe it's a general thing, so we should just look out for it and do something about it, because anything worse than COVID-19 will be worse than deadly and worse than a pandemic. I would say that.
Of course. Well, let's look at Nigerian news. Direct newspaper. Amuson, not me, made Ogun lose $19 billion Dangote refineries to Lagos State, coming from Governor Abiodun. We recall he was present during the commissioning of the Dangote refinery. And on the other stories here, the big story say why we are borrowing heavily, Buhari replies critics. A deliberate choice to fight poverty, he says asset investment profiles were paid for by debt, and then commissioned 3 bridges, other project, says effort reflection of change, his government promise. You can find more detail of that on page 22. We have a picture story where we can see the governor of Lagos State together with some books. You can do well to, grab the Nigerian News Direct and read more detail of any story that is of interest to you.
On Blueprint newspaper, I deliberately closed borders to enhance economy and foster security, coming from Buhari. I would like to say yes, the economy was being enhanced when it comes to our rice production in the country. It drastically improved, but I don't think the closing of the border helped with security because we still have unknown gunmen creating havoc in our community. That's what we know them. Nobody has identified them yet, so let's go with the flow like that until the government are willing to come out and identify these people for us. But then we will use the terms that the government have presented to us. I can say for sure there is an enhancement when it comes to rice production in the past 8 years, because truly we have been consuming Nigerian made or produced rice in the country. But that's just one of the commodity that did well. We are still lagging behind in many other commodities. We are still exporting raw products. We're still importing raw products. We're still importing finished good. And at the same time, there's still been what would I call it, illegal importation of all of this rice. But yet the custom has been on it for all of these years. But then when it comes to security, I don't think the closing of our borders have done much of help to that aspect. And then if you want to know the details of what Harry is saying,
Rachel, I'm itching to say something
on
the story, because of course we're already at the last week. We have just barely 5 days to the handing over. So of course it's a time for us to analyze the past 8 years of this administration. Let's look at the economy as a whole. And when we're looking at the economy, we're not just looking at our agri sector, which of course you picked one, which is the rice production. But then if you go down to ask a layman about this rice production, Rachel, he or she won't feel the impact. Why? Because rice is higher right now.
True.
How much is the measure of local rice right now? You're going to buy 1,000 plus. How much are you going to get rice? Oil? True. Let's talk about wheat. How much is bread? There was a time that we had a organization of bread bakers going on strike. Why? Because we could not afford the flour. That was during the Ukraine crisis that we had together with the Russia. So if we're going to just extrude the entire economy, Rachel, you will agree with me that a lot of things are not actually fixing as they should fix. Looking at the 8 years, is the government trying its best? Yes. Are the people feeling the impact? No. That is just it clearly. If you're going to look at our cash crunch, it was as if we didn't really plan. The policy was good, but we didn't plan for it well. Let's take a look at where we're having the scarcity of fuel, and then we're having adulterated fuel, and we begin to ask where the agency involved in all of that. Didn't you test? Didn't you know how the oil, because just yesterday you're trying to enlighten us on the oil we use here in Nigeria is quite different from the oil a lot of people use outside. And so you begin to know that a lot of things are not falling well. If you're talking about the economy, a lot of things are actually in place. I'm going to look at the transport sector. It plays a vital role when you're talking about the economy, because if the road is not good, how do I tend to transport my goods from the farm back to the market where I can sell? If we're going to talk about so many things, Rachel, we're going to name them one after the other on the economy of Nigeria as a whole. Are we looking at our rubber farm? Have we do something about it? No. A lot of money has been, being pushed into the Jakarta steel mining. Is it functioning? No. We're still looking at illegal refineries in the Niger Delta, where we heard yesterday one of our callers was saying we have refineries there. And then we are seeing Abiodun, even on the paper today, he said how Dangote got it. He wanted to get. So a lot of things, you begin to look at it. Yes, we know that this administration tried its best, but then if you really want to have a very good scorecard talking about this administration, is when you go down to relate with the common man, with the masses, and then you begin to ask them questions. How did you feel about this administration? We're talking about 24 years into democracy, Rachel. From 1999, where we had democracy to date, let's just analyze. Now let's leave other administration now for the 8 years. Let's look at security again, which you brought up. Yes, when we had the Chibok girls, till date, not all of them are back. Just yesterday, I was talking about Leah Sharibu. Till date, we don't know what is happening. We had that of Deborah that was killed in school. Till date, we don't know who are the people. It seems as if their spirit, the guys have disappeared. We don't know where they are. We have scores of killing. Just yesterday, we saw about 18 being beheaded in Benue. We're talking about killings in Plateau State. We're talking about Zamfara, Katsina. Yobe. So you begin to mention Niger. Back was then that you could actually travel, but right now some of these places that were peaceful are no longer peaceful. So if you're going to look at the scorecard very, very properly, Rachel, you will agree that a lot of things are not falling in place. But can we change the narrative? Of course we can, if only we are willing. Because once we have a willing spirit, it's all about a matter of time. You see, everything will begin to fall in place. Our commerce will be moving very rapidly. Talking about even our currency, we'll begin to see that we're beginning to do what we want to do the right way we should do it. We'll be able to, you know, begin to export some of our finished goods, and then, of course, like that of the Dangote, which we were looking at. Imagine if people from other African countries or even America, Asia, coming to buy oil from you. Of course, they will have to use our naira, and that will give our money value eventually. We're looking at inflation. Of course, it's not just in Nigeria, but then to some extent, ours is becoming something unbearable. We just saw that, okay, interest rate will be increased again by CBN. They are likely that it will be increased. So a lot of things have to be looked into carefully, but we are hoping. Truly, we are hoping, because of course there's hope for Nigeria. I keep saying I believe in it. Maybe that is why I love the color green, because that is the color of Nigeria. But we have to put our hands together. It's not just all about our leaders, but in my own small capacity, in my own place, what can I do to also contribute to this? It's one thing, it's easy for us to complain, but we're not ready to put the work to see that things are falling. So we hope that together, united, we can do something to just make sure that we have a better country eventually.
Sure. And you can find the details of that statement from the president on page 6. And the big story on Blueprint newspaper ahead of May 29 inauguration, pressure mounts on APC over Pabio and Abba's endorsement. Legislative aides back NWC groups call for ex-Akwa Ibom governors probe. 150 reps members elect mobilized storm APC secretariat for Abbas. We're still consulting, says party chair Adamu. Froch leads U.S. delegation to inauguration. Blair visits Tinubu. You can find the details on page 5 and 15. Kogi versus AGF. Supreme Court cautions against harassment of government officials. Saving Nigeria 138 billion naira from production equipment fabrication. This is coming from the RMRDC. You can find the details on page 21. No extra monetary request from pilgrims, says NAHCON. UBA sets new record, boost 53% female board membership. You can find the details on page 23, and we have a picture story where we can see the president-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu and with the U.S. delegation for the inauguration, and that's all the news on Blueprint newspaper.
Right before we further with the paper review, we'll take this time out so we can let you through the story, what you feel about the inauguration coming up. You've seen security is going to be tight, especially in the FCT, and then how we can also contribute, looking at the scorecard of the Buhari administration, what they have done, especially in regard to the debt, where we are having the president saying that most of this debt was used to actually build infrastructure, and also reasons why he closed the border for security reasons. So you can do well, go through some of the stories, and when we come back, we'll open the phone line so we can, hear some of your contributions on it. Please do not go anywhere. I'll be right back. Thank you for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies on Echo Television. We've been looking at various stories that have been making the lead on our paper this morning, and our numbers are displayed on your screen at this moment. So we'll please, encourage you to do well to call us and air your thoughts on stories of interest to you. Please do remember to turn down the volume of your TV set when you call us, and also to be very civil with your language when you call us, because we are really, really interested in what you have to say, and other viewers also want to know what you have to say so they can contribute. You can also drop your comments on our Facebook and YouTube pages, and then we'll take it live here on the show. I still have Rachel Tanze with me. Thanks, Rachel, for doing this.
You're welcome.
All right, let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. Biden's theme for Tinubu's inauguration: Blair will be back incoming government. You can do well to read that story on page 1 of the Nation newspaper. Foreign student barred from bringing family members to UK. You can find that on page 4. Stop harassing Kogi officials, Supreme Court tells anti-graft agency. And we have Benny Mori President Jack Reed celebrates wife Elizabeth at 30. You can find that on page 7. All right, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you. We're great.
My name is Pastor Abba, calling from Boko in Benue State.
All right. Please go ahead, sir.
My take is on Buhari's praising himself on the borrowing and the infrastructure. I don't believe in what he has said. Really, he improved on some of the infrastructure, but I think the borrowing overshadows what he has done. A father in the house, let's look at Nigeria as a house, a family. A father in a family goes out to borrow for the future of the children. How are these children going to survive and pay the debt that their father has borrowed? I think the past regimes, they are not so myopic that they did not borrow. But what Buhari would have done that would clap for him would have to manage our economy, use what we have to develop the economy. That would have been better. But not going to borrow and say we have done it. I think there are other presidents, the past one that had also this conceived idea of developing Nigeria, but did not go out to borrow. So the borrowing has downplayed whatever it has done, whatever it has achieved. Then the second point is on he's going to Niger. If they come after him, he'll go to Niger. Of course, we know that he has made inroad into Niger. He built a road from his state to Niger. He built a railway from his state to Niger. He bought vehicles for officials of Niger government. So we all know that he has made a good place for himself in going to Niger. Then the last point is on this second Niger bridge. I don't agree with the Southeast governors that named the second Niger bridge after Buhari. I think it's a disservice to Goodluck Jonathan, who laid the foundation of that second Niger bridge. Several governments have come and gone until Jonathan came and laid the foundation. We didn't expect him to complete because government is a continuum. But I think it would have the bridge would have been named after Goodluck Jonathan. I think that's my take this morning. Good morning.
Morning, sir. Thank you so much for your contributions on this story. Still on the Nation newspaper, we have the big story that says we borrowed for projects to create wealth, says Buhari, with the writer President speak on debt burden. Second Niger Bridge Road offices inaugurated. And you can find detail of that story on the front page and also on page 4. We have FRS to capture 90% of eligible taxpayers. CBN access 132 microfinance banks. You can find on page 5. And tribunal orders consolidation of PDP. All right. Good morning, sir. Hello, sir. Good morning.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning, Rachel. And I thank you people for what you are doing. The program is really a very educating one. And I appreciate you for all that you are doing for Nigerians. I just want to comment on the statement by our president that he deliberately closed the border, grow the economy. So it's very unfortunate that he's making that statement because when that policy came up, we continued to complain. You don't close the border without making an alternative. What Nigeria needed was an industrialization of the economy before you close the border. You did not give any alternative. You just closed the border, and Nigerians started suffering. And that brought about the hyperinflation that we experience in Nigeria. So many companies have to close shop because they don't have access to raw material, which they do import from abroad to produce the products for Nigerians to use. So these are the things. he should have, I believe, that he should have kind of set up companies, industrialize the economy before closing the borders, so that those things that cannot be imported, or those things that have restricted from being imported, can now be produced in Nigeria. That is how to grow the economy. You see? And also for him to make that statement that he will be welcomed or will be protected by Niger Republic if Nigerians or Nigeria come after him. I don't think it is unpresidential for him to have made that statement. I just hope that the incoming government will look at all these things and know how to learn from the mistakes that his government made and put the economy on the right path, so that Nigerians can rejoice. Nigerians can really have a breath of fresh air. Let us at least enjoy a bit, because we have suffered enough in Nigeria. That is my contribution. God bless Nigeria. God bless everybody.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
God
much,
bless you
sir,
too,
for that
sir.
contribution. Well, let's continue with the Nation newspaper, where we have Tribunal orders consolidation of PDP Labour Party APM petition with the rider Obi Labour Party get 3 weeks to prove case. Hearing must end August 8 and witnesses to testify from May 30th. Downside of the paper, 30 Ocean pupils faint after inhaling tear gas. All right. Hello, good morning, sir.
Stella calling from Jos.
All right, go on, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I just want to comment on the newspaper headline.
All right, please go ahead, sir.
I want to urge the new leaders, irrespective of those who vote you or not, because what is going on in the country is they are saying that if this state vote me, I will do that to them. I'm of the opinion that once you are a leader, you are a leader for all. While they put you into that office, you are for all. For some time, even the clamor for the House of Rep and all other things, they are saying that this state contribute much more votes than the others. I'm the one supposed to be a leader. Let there be justice in the land. Let Tinubu make his administration inclusive, so that there will be justice in the land, irrespective of those who vote him. You are a leader for all. Thank you. That is my take.
Thank you so much, sir. And that is very right, in the right direction. Well, that's all on the Nation newspaper.
On the Matrix newspaper, direct entry registration closes May 30th, coming from JAM. You can find the details on page 3. Why second Niger bridge was named after Buhari, coming from Fashola. You can find the details inside the paper on page 4. Collapse of Ijora Bridge, Apapa and Ajeromi residents in disarray. Why I appointed women ministers of finance in my 8 years in office, coming from Buhari, gives reason Niger Republic will defend him after office. And the big story on the Matrix newspaper, Tinubu's inauguration hits top gear. U.S. releases high-power delegation for Tinubu's inauguration. President-elect hosts former UK Prime Minister. UK bars Nigerian student orders from bringing family by January 2024. Glo, MTN, Airtel, 9 Mobile adopt NCC's new unified USSD codes. Sheikh Kuti finally regains freedom. You can find the details on page 10. At the downside of the paper, Lagos free zone to generate $12 billion add to GDP. The details can be found on page 13. We have a picture story. Tony Blair visits Tinubu ahead of inauguration. And that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
On the Leadership newspaper, on the 10th Assembly, Tinubu Kwankwaso Paris Party alters promotion as Tony Blair visits President-elect. You can find out on page 10. Gwandu assumes office as Naseni Executive Vice Chairman. And we have other stories here trending. Gombe governor is the new NGF chairman. We know that the former Northern Governors Forum, so we actually have to congratulate the governor of Gombe for his new appointment as the NGF chairman. And on numbers, African Development Bank approves $15 million for Nigerians. You can find that story more inside the paper. Leadership signed pact with China Media Group to deepen relations. And we have the big story here that says 5 days to go. Curious public peep into politics, fashion, style of the first ladies. Aisha Buhari, Olureme Tinubu styles catch attention for different reasons. You can find what those reasons are on page 4. Inua Yahya replaces Lalong as Northern Governors Forum chairman. And we have Owando, Lagos begin operation of electric mass transit buses. You can find detail of that story inside the paper. And that's all on the leadership newspaper.
On First News newspaper, Shehu Kuti released on bail reunites with family. Oil mogul Jack Rich celebrates wife Dr. Elizabeth at 30. UK prohibits Nigerian students others from bringing family members. Presidential poll Atiku Obi get 3 weeks to present witnesses as tribunal concludes hearing August 8. And the big story on First News, Tinubu's government will face multiple industrial crises. NLC predicts, says Buhari's failure to honor various agreements with different unions will pose serious problems for his successor, expresses pity for president-elect. How UK special forces have been operating secretly in Nigeria. Ex-UK Prime Minister Blair visits Tinubu, pledges support. What we discussed coming from the president-elect. I deliberately closed land borders coming from Buhari, says Nigerians enjoying positive results of ban on foreign rice and others. Second Niger Bridge inaugurated, renamed Muhammadu Buhari's Bridge. And that's all the news on First News newspaper.
On New National Star, USN 9-man team for Tinubu's inauguration, which you can find on page 17. Hilda Berchi, Kukaton view 4.8 billion times nationwide. That's a report you can find on page 12. CBN wants school fees paid through e-Naira. You can find more of that story on page 15. And the second Niger Bridge named after Buhari as he inaugurates the project. You can find on page 7. Stakeholders tax Tinubu on power sector growth strategy. Lament unimpressive performance of sector after 20 years. Federal government spent 2 trillion naira as grant to GESCO's discourse without positive result coming from Ajero. UK burns foreign students' family members' work after studies. Reps transmit independent candidacy bill to Buhari for asset. Abbas not yet the 10th Assembly Speaker, says the APC Chairman Adamu. And we have the PEPT gives Obi 3 weeks to prove allegation against Tinubu. You can do well to follow that story on page 17. And that's all on the New National Star.
On the Guardian newspaper, Buhari's fragile pieces, governance sans rule of law too. And the big story, division over oil search in North as NNPC returns to Lake Chad. Concerns as Buhari withholds assent to sexual harassment bills days to exist. You can find the details on page 4. Kogi AG versus AGF, Supreme Court cautions against harassment of Kogi officials pending outcome of suit. 6 days to go, Buhari clears over 40 pending memos, appoints agency heads. Nigeria absent as African leaders fall global debt financing models. You can find the details inside the paper on page 5. We have a picture story, official launch of electric mass transit buses in Lagos State by Owando, and that's all the news on the Guardian newspaper.
On Vanguard newspaper, import bill on manufactured goods fall 18.4% to 2.45 trillion naira. You can find on page 19. And on the 10th House National Assembly leadership, how Tinubu, Kwankwaso, Paris Pali may alter premonition. We found oil where others ran away, coming from the NNPC. We will be prudent with the 115 billion naira bond, coming from Sanwo-Olu, the governor of Lagos State. And we have on the assault on police, Shehu Kuti released on bail and has been reunited with his family. You can find that story on page 7. And on the presidential poll, court merges Atiku, Obi, APM's petition for hearing May 30th. Biden announces 9-man delegation for Tinubu's inauguration, and Supreme Court caution against harassment of Kogi officials, which you can find on page 10. And we also have, after May 29, Niger Republic will defend me if, coming from Buhari, says he deliberately shot land borders, as only God can secure Nigeria borders. Explain why he appointed lady ministers of finance. Recalls how he lost 2 children to sickle cell. Nigerians won't miss Buhari, coming from Afenifere, and then it shows his non-commitment to Nigeria, coming from the Middle Belt Forum. Buhari's statement validates earlier speculation of ties with Niger, coming from Pandef. You can find more detail of that story on page 5. And of course, just from our calls, people are beginning to fault his statement, trying to say that that's the reason why he did what he did for Niger Republic, because he has. I think this is not just today he's saying that when he's disturbed, he has been saying this for the past 2 weeks or even a month now, that when he's been disturbed, he will run to Niger Republic. Well, you can find detail of that story on page 5. We have the picture story, commissioning of the second Niger Bridge. So beautiful. We hope that we'll make good use of that road. Owando Lamata to build local capacity with electric mass transit buses. You can find that story on page 9. And we have a picture story here, the Fidelity Bank AGM, that's the annual general meeting. We can see some of the stakeholders of that bank. So you can do out to grab the Vanguard and read more details of stories of interest to you.
On the Nigeria Standard, Northern Governors elect Yahaya Inuwa as new chairman. Court orders NDA to reinstate unlawfully dismissed cadets. Nigeria to tackle flood disasters with 3.4 trillion naira coming from the committee. Journalists hail along for remodeling press center. And the big story, Buhari, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Gowon Commission flyover High Court complex. And on Mangu killings, MDA raises alarm over ethnic cleansing. Biden announces 9-man presidential delegation for Tinubu's inauguration. And we have a picture story, Plateau State Governor and Chairman Northern Governors Forum, and Right Honorable Simon Bakola Long, left admiring one of the copies of the Nigeria Standard newspaper publication during the commission of PPC City Line press machine. And that's all the news on the Nigeria Standard.
On Nature newspaper, Dangote Refinery petrol hits the market July. You can find detail of that on the front page and on page 3. The big story, Nigeria needs 3.4 trillion naira to tackle flood disaster. This is a presidential council saying, we can see a picture story actually showing the effect of the flood in various parts of the country. We hope that something will be done to, avert such things. Still on Nature newspaper, Environment Minister flags off renovation of conference hall. Biodiversity Day, experts demand collective effort to build back biodiversity. You can find detail on the front page and on page 5. SGF loan Adamu over passion towards sustainable development. And coming from additional, Africa needs 2.7 trillion naira to finance climate change. Embrace agriculture with technology advancement, and you can read detail of that on page 11. And Nigeria wheelchair basketball picks 2023 African Games ticket. You can find that story on page 21, and that's all on the Nature newspaper. All right, I think that's how far we can go on the program this morning. Thanks so much, Richard, for
You're
doing
welcome,
this with me.
Sarah.
All right, thank you to our callers who called in this morning. Thank you to the crew member and each and everyone that made sure this program is a success. Until we come here again, please do remember to be peaceful and love your brothers and sisters. Bye for now.